Vidura asked all relevant questions of Maitreya because he knew well that Maitreya was the right person to reply to all the points of his inquiries. One must be confident about the qualifications of his teacher. One should not approach a layman for replies to specific spiritual inquiries. Such inquiries, when replied to with imaginative answers by the teacher, are a program for wasting time. The sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Shaunaka Rishi and Sutta Goswami. They want to hear Bhagavatam from him. So he recites what he heard when he was in the assembly that gathered before Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. And then in that narration of Shukadev speaking with Maharaj Parikshit, so many other narrations are recounted. For instance, now we are hearing what was discussed between Vidura and Maitreya Muni. So the talks of Vidura and Maitreya Muni were explained by Shukadev Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. Which in turn were explained by Sutta Goswami to Shaunaka and many sages of Naimisharanya. So we will go on. A few more verses. Text 4. The greatly learned sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, Brahma thus engaged himself in penances for 100 celestial years, as advised by the personality of Godhead, and applied himself in devotional service to the Lord. Report. Now that Brahma engaged himself for the personality of Godhead, Narayan, means that he engaged himself in the service of the Lord. That is the highest penance one can perform for any number of years. There is no retirement from such service, which is eternal and ever encouraging. Text 5. Thereafter Brahma saw that both the lotus on which he was situated and the water on which the lotus was growing were trembling due to a strong violent wind. Report. The material world is called illusory because it is a place of forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. Thus, one engaged in the Lord's devotional service in the material world may sometimes be very much disturbed by awkward circumstances. There is a declaration of war between the two parties, the illusory energy and the devotee, and sometimes the weak devotees fall victim to the onslaught of the powerful illusory energy. Lord Brahma, however, was sufficiently strong by the causeless mercy of the Lord, and he could not be victimized by the material energy, although it gave him cause for anxiety when it managed to totter the existence of his position. finally, text 6. Long penance and transcendental knowledge of self-realization had matured Brahma in practical knowledge, and thus he drank the wind completely along with the water. Purport. Lord Brahma's struggle for existence is a personal example of the continued fight between the living entities in the material world, and the illusory energy called Maya. Beginning from Brahma down to this age, the living entities are struggling with the forces of material nature. By advanced knowledge in science and transcendental realization, one can try to control the material energy which works against our endeavors. And in this modern age, advanced material scientific knowledge and penance have played very wonderful roles in controlling the powers of the material energy. Such control of the material energy, however, can be most successfully carried out if one is a soul surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and carries out His order in the spirit of loving transcendental service. Mukam karoti vachalam manam manayate ganim. Yatkripatadaham mande Sri Guru Nidhanam. So, we hear that Lord Brahma, in order to accomplish the business, the work of creation, he had to overcome tremendous obstacles. And Srila Prabhupada explains that the material nature, illusory energy, is always presenting obstacles to all living entities. And so, when faced with obstacles which seem to us to be insurmountable, we ask ourselves why. Because of obstacles, we cannot realize our desires, our plans. And so we become baffled. We wonder, why am I here? Why is there anything? Someone asked this to Srila Prabhupada, some intellectual. Why is there anything? So Srila Prabhupada gave a very illuminating answer. That the reason why, Prabhupada first of all said that really we should inquire where from everything comes. But the man kept insisting, well, I want to know why there is anything. So Srila Prabhupada then replied, everything is existing for ananda, for pleasure, for happiness. This is why we are here. This is why all the objects of the senses are here around us. This is why we are acting in this world. Because we want pleasure, we want happiness. Now this ananda that we are seeking, Prabhupada explained, is understood on two levels. There is a lower level which is easy to experience. Even the animals are experiencing it. It is a level of gross material sense pleasure. Eating, sleeping, mating. But this is lower level. That means it is actually not very satisfying, not very fulfilling. Only those that have no intelligence can be satisfied with just this. And even they are not really satisfied because they're suffering the whole time. Like the ignorant beasts that work in the field. So they pull heavy loads and they're always beset by so many miseries. Flies are biting them. It is anyway, you know. It's a terrible existence, and the only happiness that's there for them are these gross pleasures of the body. And the only reason that they appear to be satisfied with just that is that they are so ignorant. They're unable, because of ignorance, to understand their abominable condition. So ignorance does not mean satisfaction, actually. Ignorant, beastly creatures may say, no, I'm satisfied just to eat, sleep, and have sex. But that is just foolishness. So human beings, at least those human beings who are worthy of being called human beings, they recognize that just to get on in life with these gross material pleasures is a very low condition. And so human beings, they aspire for a higher level of ananda, of satisfaction, of bliss. And it's here that we find much bafflement. There are many, many, many obstructions for those who wish to attain higher satisfaction. Human beings try this. Mainly, you see, they aspire for this higher satisfaction by some mental or intellectual pursuits. But Maya bewilders them. And instead of realizing Ananda from their mental, intellectual pursuits, they realize so many varieties of speculation. So many theories. And these theories are all dry. They actually don't give any happiness. So therefore, yes, these intellectuals, they come to a point of asking, why is there anything? What does it all mean? What's the use? So, yes, we have to remove the obstruction. To attain this higher happiness. And the thing is, because this Maya Shakti is Krishna's own energy, it's not possible for us to remove her. Only Krishna can remove his Maya Shakti. And Krishna is very happy to do this for those who understand where real happiness is. Real happiness is reposed in Krishna himself. Reposed means real happiness is under the shelter of Krishna himself. It is not anywhere else. Actually, this idea that real happiness is somewhere else, that is in itself Maya. That is in itself the obstruction to real happiness. And that's why everyone is speculating uselessly. They think real happiness is on some other planet, not this planet. The followers of the Vedas think like that, therefore they worship demigods. They undergo great trouble performing sacrifices so that they can enter a Deva Loka, a heavenly planet in the next life. But is there happiness there? Lord Krishna says, Abrahma bhuvanaloka punarvartin arjuna. Wherever you go in this universe, it is just another place of birth and death. even today, when in this day people don't follow the Vedic method of elevation, still they try to go to higher planets. They try to enter the moon, which is a planet of enjoyment. But instead of going there by yagya, sacrifice, they try to go by rocket. And all they attain is dust, which is also very dry. So they are very much baffled. By the Vedic process, one can at least attain some temporary happiness in the world. By the modern process, there's no happiness at all. So anyway, all this bafflement is due to thinking that Ananda is somewhere else besides at Krishna's lotus feet. As long as we think like that, we are in Maya. As soon as we accept that Krishna is the Anandamaya Purush, he is the person who is full of bliss, there is no more Maya. It is stated, Vilaja Manaya. There's a verse which explains how Statum Iksha. Anyway, that Maya, the material energy, she is ashamed to stand in front of the Lord. So one who goes to the Lord, he's not obstructed by Maya, because Maya, she does not stand in his way. She's ashamed. So, who is it that Maya Devi is bewildering? Vimohita vikatante mamaham iti dudiya. So there it is stated that she bewilders those who think mama aham, who are only thinking of I and mine, who do not think of Krishna. And thus vikatante, because they're only thinking of I and mine, they talk all nonsense. That means they have so many theories, so many speculations of what is happiness. Mamaham iti durdiyaha. So they are durdiya. You remember yesterday we were talking about dhira. So the root is D. D means intelligent. So one who is durdiya, durdi, dur means bad. So the D, the intellect is bad, it is spoiled. There's some, I saw in some magazine somewhere, there's some rock group called Bad Brains. So Durdiya means that bad brain. So it's people with bad brains who become bewildered by Maya. And who is then not bewildered by Maya? So Sri Prahlad Maharaj says that Priyate, those who are dear to Krishna. And who is dear to Krishna? Amalaya Bhaktya Harao. Those who are unflinching or unshakable in their devotion to Krishna. Those who never give up the position of serving the Lord's lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada mentions that Maya Devi tests them like Lord Brahma was tested. Those who are weak may fall down. But one who is Priyate Omalaya Bhaktya Harao, one who is unshakable in devotional service and thus dear to Krishna, never falls down. Again, last night we were speaking of Arjuna. He became so bewildered in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. He was faced with a tremendous obstruction. But then he turned to Krishna. My dear Lord, now I am your disciple. This is sudhir. Sudhya means this is a good brain. Even if I'm bewildered. Alright. What am I? I am tiny. I'm a little spirit soul. This material energy is so great and powerful. It's not surprising if I'm bewildered. But there is something I should do, that is to turn to Krishna. Because that powerful material nature is, after all, his energy. So if I surrender to him, Lord Krishna has promised, Mameviye prapadyante mayamitam tarantite. Lord Krishna promises that those who surrender to me will cross over this mind. Sri Prahlad Maharaj says, Anyad vidambanam, and those who take any other course besides that, they will remain in illusion. That is how we've fallen down here in the material world, because we have failed this test. We thought that happiness is somewhere else besides in Krishna. And we thought that when there are obstructions to happiness, there is something else to be done besides just surrender to Krishna. This is durdiya, bad brain. So, Sri Prahlad Maharaj explains very nicely just how one can become Priyate Omalaya Bhaktya Hara, a dear devotee of the Lord. Remember that the dear devotee, Hare Krishna. Remember that the dear devotee is one who is always protected by Krishna. So how can we become a devotee who is so dear to Krishna? Krishna will keep us always under his protection, safe from his material nature. So, Sri Prahlad Maharaj says that Tato Harao Bhagavati Bhaktim Kurute Danava. He's speaking to the Danavas, to his demoniac schoolmates. So, and then he says, Atma Paumyena Sarvatra Sarva Bhutesh Manahari. Yes. That just as now, because you're demons, Danavas, you like to take care of your own sense gratification very nicely. So, in the same way, you should serve Krishna. Atmao Panyena Sarvatra Sarva Bhutat Manishware. You like to serve yourself, thinking, as people say, the self is number one. But you should understand that behind this number one self, there is a supreme self. So, we like to be selfish, but then we should be really selfish. We should serve the Supreme Self. That is Krishna. And so one who serves Krishna with the same care and attention that the materialists are serving their bodies and minds, that person becomes dear to Krishna. So materialistic people, they're so attentive in making comfortable arrangements for their body. And decorating it. And feeding it nicely. And exercising it. And providing it with all ingredients of pleasure. But again, because this concept of happiness is actually an obstruction to real happiness, therefore they just become baffled. They're only serving flesh and blood. So what happiness will you get from flesh and blood? Who is fond of flesh and blood? Again, the Danavas, the demons. They like to eat and drink flesh and blood, for one thing. But otherwise, they're very fond of the flesh and blood of this body. And they think by massaging it and doing all kinds of things to the flesh and blood, that there will be happiness. But that is not happiness. Happiness arises in the consciousness, not in flesh and blood. You see, some people, as we were explaining last night, you see here, this is the example, Sophia Temple again. Some people are deprived of the facilities for flesh and blood happiness, flesh and blood pleasure, but still they're happy. Because happiness does not come from flesh and blood. Happiness is there in the soul. And we have to remove the obstructions so that the happiness can manifest naturally. And the obstruction is Maya. But as explained, Maya does not stand in front of Krishna. So one simply has to turn to Krishna. My dear Lord, I surrender to you. Now I shall serve you. And there is no more Maya. In this December Srila Prabhupada marathon, we are all offered this opportunity. December is a cold month. And in Bulgaria also the people are very often not so pleasant to deal with. So there are so many apparent obstacles to distributing Srila Prabhupada's books at this time. But for the devotee who is fixed in this consciousness that my pleasure is not flesh and blood, my pleasure is serving Krishna, then there's no obstacle at all. He thinks that, oh, it's cold outside, very good. If I go out and distribute books, Krishna will be more pleased. Oh, these people out here are like dogs and hogs. Anyway, if I can distribute some books to them, Krishna will be more pleased. So in this way, he turns disadvantage into advantage. Because his interest is to satisfy Krishna. Just consider a master. We're not speaking of Krishna necessarily, just anybody may be in the position of master, receiving service. The master has some desire. So, if that desire is difficult to fulfill, the master may have different servants. But that one servant who is able to fulfill those desires which are most difficult to fulfill, that one receives the greatest blessing from the master. The master is most satisfied by servants who make extra endeavor. You see, if the master wants something, go out and get me a mango. And the servant goes out and comes back after a few minutes. Sir, there is no mango. I'm sorry. And the master is not very happy with his servant. This servant is not offering service, he's offering excuses. Oh, it is too difficult. This is Bulgaria, there's no mangoes here. But when a servant goes out and moves mountains, somehow comes back with a mango, sir, after great endeavor, I've found one mango here. Then that master is very satisfied. Oh, you are a very good servant. How did you do this? This is wonderful. So naturally that servant becomes most dear. Priyate amalaya bhaktya harau. He passes the Lord's test. He is an amala bhakta. His devotion is without any impurity. It cannot be shaken. Just like Lord Brahma, because he's so determined to serve Krishna, it is said here, there was this cosmic wind blowing through the whole universe. A cosmic wind, which was causing his lotus flower to totter, to tremble violently. But Brahma could swallow that wind. This means he's empowered by Krishna because he's so determined to serve Krishna. So you see, Krishna can arrange anything. Prabhupada always used to say, Krishna is not a poor man. Krishna can solve all problems. No water, no electricity, no gas. In an instant he can solve all these problems. But he'll do this for that servant who is determined, who simply is fixed in the consciousness, I must please Krishna, by all means. And those who are not so determined, who give up too easily, then they become baffled. Just study this now. Why is someone weak? It is because they think that happiness is somewhere else than in Krishna. They think, well, yeah, it's nice to serve Krishna, but I must have my happiness. See? Krishna's here, but happiness is there. So they're always trying to make a balance. For so much service to Krishna, there should be so much happiness on this side. And when his happiness goes down too much, then I'm sorry, Krishna, I can't serve you. But when a devotee understands that happiness is only here, in serving Krishna, there's no other happiness, then how will he give up? Since Prabhupada answered that question, why is there anything? It's for happiness. Whatever we're doing is for happiness. So a devotee who understands that happiness means Krishna, then he'll do anything and everything for Krishna, because that is the only happiness. So what do you think, Kalavinka? Das? Is it true? Yes, therefore, even though he's distributing in such a difficult circumstance in Bulgaria, still he can be number 4 on the Sankirtan list, even including countries like Czech Republic and Poland, where there's so much more opportunity to distribute books. This is the great art of success in devotional service. You turn all the disadvantages, all the obstacles into advantages. Because if it is difficult, that means if you do it, you will please Krishna more. And that is actually the success, to please Krishna. The more we please Krishna, the more happy we will become. And if we don't please Krishna, then what will we get? Just think about that. If we give up, oh, it's too hard, then what will you get? What was the good of that? That you can sit in some corner with your head in your hand and speculate. daydreaming some silly ideas. Making some foolish plans. What do you think, Gopati? Yes. Yes, Gopati knows about this. It's true. There is such a thing. But is there any happiness in it? Happiness in it? No. Yes, so it is useless. And therefore, Prahlad Maharaj says, Anyad vidammanam. And those who take another path, who take some other path besides just serving Krishna, they are bewildered. Prabhupada used to give the example of hunting for rhinoceros. That to serve Krishna, to surrender oneself completely to serving Krishna, this is like hunting rhinoceros. So, if there's no loss in any case if you do this. Because if you go hunting for rhinoceros, if you actually kill the rhinoceros and come back, I killed the rhinoceros, everyone will say, "Oh, such a great hunter." Even if you don't kill the rhinoceros, you come back, people will still say, "Oh, he's a great hunter," because he tries to hunt rhinoceros, but rhinoceros is very difficult. But he still must be a great hunter because he goes to Africa to hunt the rhinoceros. But if we think, "Oh, rhinoceros is too hard to hunt," no, I will hunt some mouse instead. Because they're easier to catch. I will surely be able to catch many mouses. And people will just laugh. What kind of hunter is this? He's coming back with his gun, and then he has such a string with dead mouses. People will just laugh. Are there any questions? Yes? Because her function is to bewilder. Her function is to keep the living entities away from their Lord. Yet she is the Lord's pure devotee. So, because she is devotee, she naturally wants to see everyone come to Krishna. But she knows that there are many rascals. And if she lets them just go to Krishna, they will bother him. So she is the deluding potency. She is most expert in bewildering others. So anyone who wants to go to Krishna has to pass her test. And even if they're 1% rascal only, they will not pass the test. Okay, so here's someone who looks like a pious person, looks like a good devotee, but suddenly falls down, tripped by Maya. So that's a great shame. And Maya Devi also feels ashamed. But this is her service. Any other questions? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.